What's up, good people? It's Davin, and this is another episode of the Becoming Sound podcast. Now, if you're watching me on YouTube or on my Substack, becomingsound.substack.com, you probably immediately are recognizing that there's something unusual transpiring here, and it is that I'm driving. We're going on a road trip together. It's actually not a real road trip. I'm not going that far, but here's the deal. I've been wanting to get a podcast episode recorded, but it's just been really busy lately. And I decided I'm going to be on the road for a bit. So let's do it here because, some of my favorite conversations I've ever had with friends are conversations that I've had in the car while driving. So hopefully you'll deem this a safe activity for me. I promise to keep my eyes on the road, but I've got some exciting news that I want to share with you. And so while I've got the time here, I'd love to just check in and do that if you will allow me. So the news that I'm going to share, if you follow me on Instagram or if you're on my mailing list, you've already heard this, but hopefully this will be an opportunity for you to hear a little bit more in depth what it's all about. But before I share that, I just wanted to let you know that the Reset, my immersive sound healing experience, is coming to 3 exciting venues soon over the next 3 months. So the first one is actually next week. I'm going to be in Miami at the Dennis Moss Center. I'm really excited. I've never performed in Miami before, and I'm just so happy to be invited to this beautiful venue and this beautiful location. And so if you know anyone in Miami or if you are in or around the area, I hope you'll point them toward the resetsoundexperience.com to learn more, or davinyoungs.com. Either website is a great opportunity to connect around this. And then in May, at the end of May 28th, I'm going to be back at Wolf Trap, which is one of the most beautiful venues. It is indoor-outdoor sort of space in the DC, Baltimore, Maryland area. I brought the Reset there last summer. I can't believe I get to come back so soon and do it again, but it was a really successful experience. And so I'm thrilled to get the opportunity to go back. So that is happening in May, at the end of May. And then at the end of June, June 27th, I will be back also at the Kimmel Center in Philadelphia. Another huge honor to be able to bring the Reset there. So again, you can learn more about this on social media at Instagram at Davin Youngs or davinyoungs.com or the resetsoundexperience.com. You'll be able to find me wherever it is that you choose to look and find out more. Excited to get those gigs on the calendar and have them put out in the world, and even more excited to do them. Okay, so that's happening, but here's what I want to share with you. And again, you may have heard this already, but on June 13 and 14, I'm doing something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time, and I'm finally pulling the trigger. I'm hosting the first ever Singing for Sound Healing weekend virtual workshop. So the 13th and 14th, 5 hours each day, you and I, if you so choose, are going to hang together, and we are going to explore singing and the voice as a tool for individual, personal, and collective healing. This is something I've been talking about doing for a long time, and I must also admit that this workshop is me dipping my toes. It's a precursor to a more extensive training program that I will be launching. But I wanted to get my feet wet. I wanted to bring you into the mix, share with you what I have come up with, shall we say, pedagogically, and get your feedback, and then also have that be an invitation into doing more extensive work if you so choose. Now, I just launched this with one post and one email, and I have to say, I've already gotten a really beautiful response. We've got a good group signed up already, and we're months away. But I want to get as many people in the room as want to be in the room, because I have the capacity and how it is that I'm going to be offering the information to do this for whomever really wants to be there. But what's really exciting about this is I think I am finally ready to do it, in that I have systems in place to offer you this information in a way that I think will be really practical and useful for you, wherever it is that you are. If you have any interest in exploring the voice as a tool for personal growth, healing, or if you're interested in holding space for others, whether that be in the format of a sound bath, sound experience, or you name it, using singing in the voice, I'm going to give you some foundational information that represents the path that I've been on and the path that I've discovered through the work that I do. If you know me, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know that singing in the voice has always been central to the work that I do. And I suspect it will be central for most of my life. The reason being, singing is in so many ways my life's work, my calling. I don't recall a time in my life where I wasn't singing. It's one of my earliest memories in life. But I often share that singing has always been my love, but hasn't always been my joy. And a part of my journey as a human has been my own path toward finding a way to use my voice that felt aligned with the things that are most valuable and most important to me. And one of the questions I get so often when people observe the different ways in which I use singing in the voice, they're like, how did you end up doing this? It's so unique. And it's a complicated question. And that's why I have hesitated to put some sort of training or teaching program out into the world, because I wanted to be able to offer it just in a way that felt good to me, that felt aligned with my knowledge and understanding, but that didn't require you to have gone down the, shall we say, complex path that I have to get here. But during the training, what's going to happen is on the very first day, we are going to spend a lot of time just thinking about the voice individually, personally. I want to share with you a bit of functional vocal training, really understanding the functionality of your voice in your body, um, the way in which the term freedom in the voice actually matters from a functional perspective. And when I say functional, I mean literally how your voice works. I want to think about how that matters as it relates to your nervous system. I want to compare some of these understandings around the voice and register and balance and freedom as it relates to the chakra system. I want you to understand what it means to use your voice energetically for yourself and how that might translate into how it is that you show up for others. And then the second day will be a little bit more strategic in terms of understanding how to put together uh, sound healing, whatever that means. That could mean literally setting up a sound bath like I do, or it might be in any other shape or form that you use, or that you might want to hold space for others. It could be in a group setting, it could be in one-to-one settings, it could be an augmentation to what it is that you already do. It could be a way to prick your brain into new ideas and how you might hold space for others using singing in the voice as a healing modality. This workshop requires no special skill or ability. You don't have to be an amazing performer to do this. The only thing I ask is that you have a general sense that you can sing in tune. Uh, a lot of people, most people can, but for some folks, they do struggle to sing in tune. And I want to say, from a coaching and teaching perspective, that that is not me saying you shouldn't sing. You should absolutely sing. And if you work with the right teacher and the right coach over an extended period of time, if you struggle to match pitch, you can learn to match pitch. I've done this with people over many years. But for this workshop in particular, you need to have some confidence in your ability to sing in tune and confident in your willingness to share your voice in community with others. You don't have to be, super brave, but you do need to be willing to show up and share, because that is going to be a part of the workshop, our willingness to share our voice with others. And I really use this word share intentionally. I think what inhibits so many people is the conflation of sharing and performance. Now, I want to be really clear that I think performance gets a bad rap, and I can defend performing well as sharing, and I'll talk more about this actually at the workshop. But there are so many people that have these negative stories about their voice and their ability to sing, whether they should or shouldn't sing, and you name it. And so much of that gets tied to singing as something that is exclusively only valid on a stage or on a TV show or at some large scale. And what I want to really highlight for all of us is that, first and foremost, the best performers, while they're doing aspects of, well, they're sharing aspects of themselves that are certainly performative. They're outside of the normal means of everyday communication. The best performers are simply sharing of themselves. And so I do think that there is a bridge. I do think that there is an aspect of singing that is always performative. But what I want to bring you back to is that in order to share your voice successfully with others, to hold space for others in their own healing journey, you must have a relationship with your own voice that is based in a freedom and authenticity of yourself that is inspirational in terms of your willingness to share. Like, ultimately, this is about learning to show up as you, and that the you that sings can add value to other people's lives on their own journey of trying to repair wounds from the past and trying to write new stories for their future. And like I said, people always ask me, how did you get to do this? And if you check out previous podcast episodes, I've shared a lot of my story, and I'm not going to do that all here today. But I will remind you that there were there were three primary things that happened to me that have pointed me on the path that I am now. A big one was in 2014 when I met the teacher Jeannie Levetri, the creator of somatic voice work. My work with Jeannie was super transformative in terms of my understanding of the functionality of the voice and the body. Her work is so beautiful, and it's honoring the somatic aspects of what it is to use your voice. I mean, one of the things I love so much about the voice as a tool is it is an embodied tool. You can't be disembodied and sing well. You have to honor the truths of your body and this lived experience, this lived human experience in your body. And Jeannie's work really connected me with a deeper understanding of the functionality of my voice and my body, the somatic aspects of this truth. But what it did even further is it connected me with the ways in which the voice is not just a somatic experience, but it's interwoven with the psychological, spiritual, emotional aspects of my being. And those are not separate from the body. And this is actually going to be in an upcoming podcast episode that I want to share with you, but they're always interwoven. They cannot be separate. But it is important that when we're thinking about particularly our voice, and particularly about how we can relate in our voice to others, this shared experience, that we recognize that the most objective truth we have, the place to begin with our voice, is of the body. And Jeannie's work was so transformational for me in that. The second thing that happened was when I met Bobby McFerrin for the Circle Songs workshop in 2015. And this is where I really started to understand methods of improvisational singing. And this is something that is going to be highlighted extensively in the workshop. But I will say it also takes a long time to develop comfort in this arena. But circle singing or circle songs is this mode of improvisational singing that brings people together in collective song with a leader creating these sort of improvised parts. And at the time I discovered circle singing, one of the ways in which a lot of people practice leading circle singing is to use looping devices. And so I was practicing on my own using this improvised singing, and that happened to also collide with a time where I had discovered I was deeply in a yoga practice in my life and exploring meditation, and I discovered sound baths for the first time. And it was only through this sort of divine intersection of practicing circle singing and exploring sound baths and sound healing that I got the inspiration to use this improvisational singing methods, and in my case, looping my voice, live looping my voice, to hold space for sound as a healing modality. Over the years, I've realized that this improvisational singing is especially useful. Now, some people refer to this as light language. If you grew up in a charismatic religious tradition, I think that in some ways this can relate to speaking in tongues. My teacher, Rhiannon, uh, who is a colleague of Bobby McFerrin, who teaches circle singing and improvisational singing as a tool for personal growth, healing, and development. She refers to it as personal language, which is the term that I feel most comfortable adopting. But this improvisational singing is so powerful in that it allows you to use your voice in a way that doesn't carry with it some of the meaning and baggage that might trigger folks to how should I say? Trigger is the best word. How it might shut them out from their capacity to experience your voice because of the words that you might have used. And so we'll talk about this more extensively in the workshop. I'm not entirely against words. I don't think that they're bad or wrong when singing in the sound healing space, but I'm really compelled by this idea of improvisational singing or personal language as a means of holding space for others and allowing them to then essentially impose their own meaning on what it is that you're doing with your voice, allowing them to hear what it is that they need to hear that would speak to where it is that they are on their journey. So the work with Bobby McFerrin, and it's, again, I think about it as divine intersection of my discovery of sound as a healing modality. So powerful. So then the third thing that happened is I went to a workshop early on when I was studying sound healing. I went to a place called the Sage Academy for Sound Energy in upstate New York, and I did a workshop. And at that workshop, it was a week-long workshop. At that workshop, I had an experience with a Peruvian shaman. That's a chuckle whenever someone starts a story like that, right? But his name was Tito La Rosa. I just told this story to a client the other day, but I'm so fond of this memory because in this experience, I won't tell you the extended version, but essentially Tito set up this rose ceremony for us. And at the heart of the ceremony was Tito calling individuals into the middle of the circle and essentially playing an instrument to each of us. It was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. It was an awakening experience on so many levels. But what blew my mind out of this experience was that this man played his flutes, his guitar, his, you name it. A lot of them were indigenous instruments, but he played them each to us individually with such care. And it was something so transcendent of performance. And it alerted me to this inherent power of music that I've always known to be true, but I had only experienced it in two places. And one was in a traditional performance venue, watching a concert or a show. And the other one, for me, growing up as the son of a minister, was at church. But this experience of intimacy and connection through the quote-unquote performer sharing of their art form so individually, but in community. We were all there witnessing others having the Tito experience. It just got me so curious because the one thing that he didn't do, he didn't sing. And there is no more intimate or meaningful instrument in the world than the voice. Now, for some folks, the idea of someone singing to them one-to-one is incredibly awkward. That seems totally outside of something that they might like to partake in. And there is, sort of a potential cringe factor there. But I think that that is because of the potential for deep intimacy in that kind of sharing. And I love this because it just really alerted me to the power of the voice, and it got me really curious. And so from there forward, this all really started coming to the world in 2018, where I was creating these immersive sound healing experiences that centered my voice. And now here we are, it's 2026, it's 8 years later, and I've done this all over the country. I've done this at venues like the Kennedy Center. I've done this at Chicago's Orchestra Hall, but I've also done it in small, intimate studios. I've done one-to-one sessions and work, and I'm now more convinced than ever that the voice is the most underutilized tool in the space of sound as a healing modality. If you see the standard sort of sound bath setup, what you're going to see is you're going to see some crystal bowls. You're going to see tuning forks. You're going to see a gong. You're going to see an ocean drum. You're going to see rattles. You're going to see chestnut shells. You're going to see a standard group of instruments. And that's because they are so powerful and so wonderful in their ability to hold space. But what you won't see, and I'm not saying I'm the only person doing this, there are other people doing it, but what you won't see often and what you won't see advocated for enough is the integration of one's voice. And here's why. Your voice carries so much information. So much information. It carries the entirety of your experience. It carries the entirety of your body's story. It carries with it every hope, dream, and vision you have for the future. It carries with it your spiritual relationship, your divine relationships. It carries with it the story of your history and everything that you've been through. And with that carries so much potential for connection because it's human. All of those other instruments are wonderful and poignant and meaningful. And I could do a whole other episode about the various instruments and the power that each has, but none of them have the absolute human power that your voice does. But the reason that most people aren't using their voice is simply because they're afraid. They don't believe that they have the skills. They don't believe that they have the ability. They don't believe that they are allowed to. They don't believe that they should be able to use their voice. And I'm here to combat that. Now, do you need to be skillful in this offering? Yes. The same way that you need to be skillful in any offering before you just haphazardly put it out in the world. I want you to have some skill, and that's why I'm interested in creating this training. But before I even do that, what I want you to know is that this isn't about being good at something yet. You have to be willing to start from the ground up and to learn. And especially if you have a background in music, I want to dispel this myth that sound healing is somehow separate from that work. When I developed the reset and the very first experience that I ever created at scale, when I did it in Orchestra Hall in Chicago, one of the things that really stood out to me about that opportunity to bring this work into that space was my ability, having grown up as a performer and having attended a conservatory of music and, having occupied spaces like Orchestra Hall in Chicago and having had a dream of being a singer that would sing in spaces like that. What I recognized that I was uniquely positioned to illuminate for people was that there is often a hierarchy of what we believe performance is, what we believe art, what we believe creativity can do. And so we go to an orchestra concert and we sit and we have to dress a certain way, act a certain way, and we sort of limit what it is that we think that experience is. But then all of us have had an experience where we go to a concert and it somehow feels like it changes us. It shifts something within us. I have so many stories throughout my life. Actually, one I'll just name for you. I'll never forget in college, the artist Patty Griffin came and performed at Oberlin, where I went to school, and she performed at Finney Chapel, which is this really cool chapel. And the whole concert was just her and her guitar. And I didn't even know who Patty Griffin was at the time. Now I do. But I sat up in the balcony, and when I listened to Patty sing, her voice sounded like crystal. And I mean that in the most beautiful way. It was so clear, it's so poignant, and it seemed to change my cellular being. It really spoke not only to my heart, but to my whole experience as a human. And, that concert is forever etched in my mind. And we've all had these concerts, but then we lose track of the fact that music and art, that's what it does best. It changes your being. And so we create this sort of separation of these experiences are entertainment. These experiences are this. These experiences are that. And then we have sound baths. And I am not about that. I think that all art, all creativity, all concerts, all music, when named explicitly for that potential, carry the possibility of all of us finding healing and transformation. But I'm really interested in the intersection of performance, of concerts, and sound as a healing modality. And I'm not saying in that that's what you have to do, but this is where my work is sort of lighting me up right now. And it's where the voice carries so much potential, because it takes the experience beyond something that can feel quite neutral and quite ambient into something that is especially pointed and especially powerful. And so I see myself as uniquely positioned to bridge this gap, to say we are going into these experiences and we are going to explicitly talk about music, art, creativity, the voice as a tool for our collective healing. It's so incredibly potential filled. That's what I think to myself. And so, I've done a lot of coaching work, and I've seen that when people start to integrate the voice and they gain confidence in doing so, when they really start to recognize that they can synthesize that healing work through their sound, it lights up their path in a totally different way. Now, I think that this could work in so many different settings. I think it could work in the therapeutic setting. I think it can work in the sound bath space. I think it could work in, I'm interested in artists, creators who write music to come do this work with me, to think about how it is that they might infuse their original music or whatever it is that they're creating with this singing-centered sound healing work. So anyways, this is what's lighting me up. This is what I've got on the docket. This is what I'm inviting you to. I would absolutely, absolutely love to have you join me. There's an early bird price. April 30th is when that ends. So I hope you'll check it out. And if you feel compelled to join me, I hope you'll be with me there. Now, before I go, I wanted to share with you this thing that happened to me the other day that is along these lines. And I just wanted to share with you a fun story. So one of the expressions of this work that I do is, of course, the sound healing work, where I create these experiences where people come and lie down and it centers my voice. But I'm also really, going back to the Bobby McFerrin days, I'm really passionate about collective singing. And I do that in Chicago with Chicago Circle Singing at the community level. But I also do this at the corporate level with something called Voxus, VOXUS, which you can learn more about at voxusexperience.com. And if I'm going to be really frank with you, I don't do as much Voxus work as I would like to. I would love to be out in the world doing it more, and I'm just going to say that to the universe. But I do have this one really fun contract. And you'll be really surprised when you know who the contract is with. I think I'm on my third year of doing this, but it's with the Federal Reserve Bank, our nation's bank. I think it was November 2023 that I got an opportunity to bring my Voxus, a very shortened version of my Voxus experience, which I call a immersive keynote, an interactive keynote. And I'll tell you what transpires here in a moment, but I did a short version at this huge conference in New York City. And this woman who runs this internal leadership academy for the Federal Reserve Bank, she saw me there and she was like, I think we want to have you come to the Fed. So I got the opportunity to do that. And I have to tell you, it was a huge surprise. I was shocked at how willing these people were to sing. I recognize it was a bit of a unique group in that it was the people that come to this training, this weekend workshop. They are all chosen to be there because they have been identified as people that will be leaders of the future within the organization. So it's an honor and a privilege. So I say that to say that maybe they have a little something to prove in being there. But they just were so game. I mean, so incredible. But if I'm really honest with you, that very first gig that I did there at the Fed, I wasn't really happy with myself. I knew that I gave the people a unique experience, but I didn't really feel in command of the information that I wanted to offer. And so every time I've come back over the last couple of years, I've been continuing to shapeshift how it is that I offer this information, specifically for this group. And I kind of molded it more toward a keynote, a lot more, let's say, slides and me talking, but it's all interactive. Like throughout the experience, they're singing, and by the end, they start out singing. I walk in the room singing, and I get them singing again using this improvisational language. So they're sort of taken off guard at what's transpiring. But then I share with them about why we would sing together. I talk a little bit about the nervous system. I talk about what it might mean for their workplace. Anyway, I didn't feel great about that. I've continued to shift. I felt better. But the other day, before this most recent gig that I'd done there, the woman who hired me, I'm always trying to get feedback. I'm like, tell me what you want me to be doing different or what would feel more aligned. Because some of the feedback I get from the participants at this gig, and this is not always the case, but at this gig has been, that was so fun. We loved it. I don't know exactly how it applies to my work. And I think that this is totally reasonable because the folks that are able to connect those dots are a very certain type of folk. And they might not necessarily all work at the Federal Reserve Bank. So that's one of the conversations I've been having with myself. How do I bring this experience to them in a way that really helps them understand how it is that they might apply this to their work environment? Well, in my conversation with the people who hire me, the particular woman said to me, I got to be honest with you. I really loved the very first time you were with us. And isn't that how it goes? Like, I had to laugh at myself. I was like, you did? That was the one I felt most insecure about. I want to say, as a quick anecdote, this happens so many times in our lives. Like, often when recording artists go into the recording studio, it's often the case that their very first take is the best take. And it won't be the take that they felt best about. But when you go back and listen and they're trying to shape shift it and mold it into something that they think is good, those times aren't as good as that first time. And once I'm getting this feedback. So in preparation for our most recent time together, I'm like, okay, Davin, how do you infuse the spontaneity, the freshness of that first time with the ways in which you've grown the information and the ways in which you're thinking about how they might apply it in their workplace? So I worked my ass off. I mean, I spent a lot of time alone in my studio, talking to myself, going through slides. I used AI to help me reorganize some of my thinking. Very useful, by the way. So grateful for that new technology to help me understand what it is that I'm trying to put out into the world. Anyway, last week, I show up for this gig, and I'm excited because I'm just so curious of what I've come up with, how it's going to land. My friends, the reason I'm telling you all of this is I go into this bank in downtown Chicago, and I stand in this room in front of 125 people from all over the country. They're flown in from all over the country, and they're all leaders within the organization and people who will be even bigger leaders in the future. I started to sing, and just as always, it's the room that you would find least suspecting of their willingness to sing, but just as always, man, did they sing back to me. And boy, did they sound good. They really sang. It was so awesome. But I offered them this new iteration of the Voxus experience where, again, I get them singing, and then I share with them. I acknowledge that it's very uncomfortable for them. That's one of the very first things I do. I acknowledge that it's weird and that it's strange, and why that we're doing it is because it's weird and strange, but it's also wonderful and uniquely human. And then I share with them some of the science around why people sing. And I share with them, the history of people singing collectively and what that might mean for them as leaders. And then I share with them some of my personal story. And then ultimately, I bring them into these collective exercises and I tell them about what does it actually mean to include diverse voices. And then I tell them more about what does it mean to navigate systems, leadership within systems, because collective singing, even in improvisation, it always relies heavily upon systems. And I tell them about what it is to be flexible, what it is to be able to step into the unknown and navigate it with flexibility. And there are many other lessons that come through. But when these people at their work, in the bank, when they engage with me, I'm so enamored with the healing that takes place. Now, I don't use that word in that space because that is not what they have hired me. Well, that is not what they think they have hired me to do. But I'm telling you this long, extended backstory to just tell you I stood there and I nearly wept at what I'm looking at, the faces. And they come up to me afterward and they tell me stories that they have about their voice. And I know I'm there to help their workplace, but I hear these individual stories about, I was told to shut up as a kid, or, my mom loved to sing and she recently passed away, or you name it. So many beautiful stories. My kids love to sing, and since my kids love to sing, I've started to sing with them, and it's brought us into deeper relationship and connection. I just hear story after story, and it's so moving to me, and it's so incredible that I get to go into these corporate arenas and bring the magic of the human voice, the magic of singing, and witness healing unfold before my very eyes. I've told you this before. I want to say it again. If you look up in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the definition for to heal, you find to become sound. Sound is synonymous with wholeness. So when I say I'm witnessing healing, I'm simply witnessing people recognize their wholeness, to recognize that they are sound, to recognize that they have a fundamental goodness about them and that their voice is not separate from them. And that even times when we feel voiceless, even times at work where we feel like, what the hell is this? There's a humanity that if we just take a moment to connect with, we can find ourselves in deep relationship with ourselves and therefore have greater capacity with others. So when I'm talking about singing for sound healing, we absolutely can think about it in terms of a sound bath. We absolutely can think about it in terms of therapeutic work. But what I want you to know is it's my intention and it's my experience to unlock your ability to simply show up anywhere in the most unexpected places and use your voice in a way that can inspire transformation and change for others, that can be the big permission slip that others need to come back home to themselves, to recognize their wholeness, to recognize their soundness, to know the inherent intrinsic worth and value of their voice. This is one of the most important tools we have for healing in the future. And while I love the bowls and I love the gong and I love all of those other instruments, if you're not fully engaging your voice, you're missing a part of your own healing journey, but you're also missing the capacity to connect on a very deep level with others, to hold space for them in their unique and wonderful and perfect journey. I'm going to leave you there. Singing for Sound Healing, June 13 and 14. If you feel compelled, or if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can email me, iam@davinyoungs.com. DM me on Instagram @davinyoungs. However it is that you want to get a hold of me. But yeah, I'm stoked. This is a next season of how it is that I'm going to be showing up in this world, and would love to do it alongside you. All right, my friends, I'm going to be home in just a bit. Thanks for hanging out with me on this drive. I'll catch you soon.